So, The Boys Season 3 just ended, and as expected, I loved it. The Boys is currently 3 for 3 on its seasons, which is pretty impressive, and it stands out as being the best superhero show on TV right now, probably next to Invincible. And that's because every season it feels fresh and unique. The gimmick this season is that the boys have access to temporary superpowers, and the story explores this in very interesting ways as our heroes are having their worst traits amplified by the godlike power they now possess. I thought that these temporary superpowers would be kind of a shallow plot device to get people watching, but they're way more than that, and it leads to a lot of compelling character development for the boys and the Seven. This is the first season where we can see Homelander actually be afraid of something. And without a doubt, this is the season for character growth. It's less about insane story beats and more about watching these people grow and develop in believable ways. A-Train is starting a story arc that I am very interested to see in the next season. Kimiko struggles with her identity and spends the season finally wondering what she wants. Hell, even Ashley has a compelling character this season. But Homelander is still the best thing about this show. We really get to see him slowly losing his mind up until he snaps. And he doesn't snap in a way that we would expect. He doesn't murder 1,000 people. It's much more subtle and realistic, and the ending of this season is somehow more scary than if he flew into the White House and killed the president. It's more scary because it's real, and we've seen the dangers of this in our real world. And this focus on character development has led to a lot of people complaining about the finale because they feel like nothing happened. And like, a lot of shit happened. You're fucking smoking crack if you think otherwise. But admittedly, it isn't as conclusive as the finale of Season 2. Like, this season's primary goal is to set up a lot of big stuff for the next season, and personally, I prefer that over the finale of Season 2, which leaves things pretty open. And the thing is, I wasn't really rushing to watch this season because there weren't really that many hanging plot threads that I was desperate to see tied up. But by the end of Season 3, I am desperate to see what happens next. I feel like things are really ramping up to a very satisfying 4th season. So yeah, I love this season, I love this show, and I'm very excited to see what happens next. So far, the show has nailed everything, and they really, really have to fuck it up for me not to enjoy it. So I'm going to go ahead and give The Boys Season 3 a 9 out of 10. So the highly anticipated Thor Love and Thunder is out, and I was deeply disappointed by it. As I think back on it, I actually like it less and less with each passing day. In my opinion, this movie is emblematic of every issue the MCU has right now. It has every single flaw of the MCU amped up to 11. It's far from the worst Marvel movie, and it's far from the worst Thor movie, but I still found myself pretty annoyed while watching it. Oh, and real quick, I almost forgot to mention this, but at the beginning of the movie, a character is introduced, and their first scene is them undergoing cancer treatment. And people in my audience still cheered when they came on screen. I just thought that was pretty fucked up. I had to mention that. Now, a lot of people have been complaining about the humor in this movie. And yeah, I think the humor is the #1 thing that ruins it. This movie is straight up not funny. And yeah, you can say comedy is subjective. And I can say that I'm gonna find where you live. I have always been sick of that fucking statement. It's used by people to completely absolve any comedic content from criticism. Yes, comedy is subjective, but so is film and any other art form, and yet I'm still here putting arbitrary number scores on movies. Even the people who like this movie can admit that there's just too many fucking jokes. For instance, one of the main jokes is about screaming goats. You know how people were posting videos of goats screaming like 9 years ago or some shit? Yeah, that's one of the main jokes of this movie. And that's the whole joke, by the way. It's just that the goats scream. And if you like to laugh at things screaming, then that's fine. But I don't. And the quality of the jokes isn't even the main problem here. It's the frequency of the jokes. Normally, Marvel movies aren't really that funny to me anyway, but the jokes aren't cluttering up the whole film, so I ignore the ones that fall flat. But here, the jokes actively take away from the rest of the movie. Every scene has to have some jokes peppered in. Serious scenes end up being a predictable sequence. You can feel when the scene is going to end with a joke, which makes it less funny. When I can think in my head, okay, here comes the joke, it just nullifies it. But I will say the jokes toned down a bit in the last act, which I greatly appreciated, because this movie isn't even all that bad. There are parts that I was enjoying, and I'll say that the last act was a lot better than the rest of the movie. The conclusion of this film is very cute. I can say that overall, this movie pulls off being cute. And since that is clearly one of the main goals of the film, I have to give it points for that. But the other goal of the movie is also to make me laugh, and it didn't. So there's that. I will say though that even when he's being cringe as hell, Chris Hemsworth is very fun as Thor. I've said it in many reviews before, but if you can tell that someone's having fun in a role, it's infectious. It makes it a lot more enjoyable. Even though he can't sell every joke, I do appreciate that he's trying his hardest. Also, Christian Bale is really good in this movie. I really liked his character and the way he portrays him. It was a lot of fun. His scenes definitely carried a lot of the movie for me. He was cool, he was creepy, his motivations made a lot of sense. I just liked him a lot. Good villain. However, and I'm curious to see how many people agree on this one, but I don't think Natalie Portman is very good in this movie. When she first reveals herself as Thor, she's confident and cool, and I'm like, yeah, that's how Jane would act. But then after that, she tries to do this like awkward fish out of water performance. And yeah, I could see that change being justified for the character, but Natalie Portman herself does not seem to be comfortable with this style of Marvel acting. The goofball, quirky, modern Marvel movie thing isn't really her forte. I've said before that I don't think she's an amazing actress.
I just feel like she's always holding something back in her performances.
She has her good performances, but I don't think she has the most range, and you can kind of tell here. This movie kind of felt like it was a really long SNL episode, with Natalie Portman as the awkward celebrity guest. When she's flying around and punching stuff and doing superhero stuff, I was on board, but again, once the dialogue comes in, I could not fucking handle it. I think a big problem here is that the stuff that made Thor Ragnarok funny are things that this movie does not have access to. Jeff Goldblum, Loki, Hulk, these are all things that gave Thor a lot of comedic material to work with. And these are all actors that are very comfortable being funny, and none of them are here, unfortunately. But yeah, in the end, I did not totally hate this movie, but I definitely did not love it. A lot of the stuff in the last third really worked for me. I enjoyed it significantly more than I did the rest of the movie, but everything building up to it was very grating and irritating to me. And it's kind of disappointing because I do think that there is an enjoyable movie underneath all of the layers of Marvel formula they just poured over it. There are a lot of things in this movie I liked. It has scenes and moments and characters that I really enjoyed, but I did not like how those concepts were presented. So I'm gonna give Thor 4 a 5.5 out of 10.